Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I am Art Stapleton here at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, and special show today. We've had a busy day. Hopefully you check out our show with reaction from Joe Shane's presser here on Tuesday morning. And then we had ESPN's Jordan Reed talking all things Giants and draft. So that's one show. Now we got a special show for you. Dane Brugler was with us last year of The Athletic. He is back. We just spent a good amount of time with Dane talking everything draft from Deion Sanders, his favorite prospects, and what he sees as options for the Giants up top in this draft. Also, a lot to like about Travis Hunter from Dane's perspective. So without further ado, let's get to Dane Brugler. All right, joining me now here at the Combine in Indy on Radio Row, Radio Podcast Row, whatever we got. It's Dane Brugler of The Athletic. The Beast is coming soon. Dane, thanks for joining me again. And first off, take me into your week a little bit. We were talking off before we got on here. What is a week like for Dane Brugler, analyst that everyone wants to talk to, but also you got a job to do to kind of, pay the bills essentially and do all of your evaluating as well?
Well, yeah, this is the most important week of the year for me, for the Beast, to get all the information I need. So I'm here Saturday to Sunday, meetings nonstop. Yesterday on Sunday, meeting with agents, scouts, teams, coaches, anybody and everybody that's going to help get the Beast done with all the information that I need. And then, today it's fun, kind of talking to everybody, all the different teams, but kind of get an understanding of what their fan base is looking for, talking about the players that might be available. So that's a lot of fun. And then tomorrow start the player interviews. All 329 players will come through here. And so I've talked to probably 90% of them. But filling in the cracks, just finding out some of that last minute information is always important. And then, of course, the on-field stuff, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it is a marathon of a week, but something that is crucial to my process of getting everything done.
Now, let's just, I want to say this for anyone who's watching. Dane says it like it's just so matter-of-factly. Yeah, I've talked to about 90% of all the guys that are here, and that's over 300 guys. I mean, this is why people turn to the Beast as one of the, one of the places you got to go. If you're into the NFL draft, you got to go to the Beast. I'm sure there are teams that use the Beast as a guide for themselves. But let's talk this draft, where you're at. Where do you start? What do you like talking about best about this draft?
Probably the depth at certain positions. Defensive line, obviously, is loaded. Tight ends, running backs. Those are the fun positions this year because there's so many. So they're just a volume of players, but then also how talented a lot of them are. You feel like there's impact players on the defensive line that are going to make teams better. And, you look at how the Super Bowl went with an Eagles front four that the Chiefs couldn't stop. And maybe you could argue that showed the importance more of the offensive line, but also showed the importance of getting home, disrupting the quarterback, and having those dudes on the defensive line. And this draft has a lot of those players. So edge, interior, if you want to get better in those areas, this draft has someone for you, first round, second round, even into day 3.
Wow. That's, I think the Giants have to look for a guy to pair with Dexter Lawrence, whether that's in free agency or in the draft. Is there a guy, I'll start off right off the bat. Is there a guy that Dex, his, how he plays? Maybe not sitting there in the first round because I don't think they're going defensive line in that spot. Is there a guy that you like, a prospect that would fit well with Dexter Lawrence?
Yeah, I think the beauty of this draft is there's multiple that you feel like, okay, we can get him second, third round. He's going to make us better, whether that's TJ Sanders from South Carolina, who a little bit undersized for what you ideally want in an interior player, but still got to try and block him, and he's so quick. The way he can wrap his body and attack gaps, really impressive. The effort versus the run, he's smart versus the run. Darius Alexander from Toledo plays with a lot of power, explosive power. And he's kind of a late bloomer where 6-year senior, older player, just kind of coming into his own. And so I think that's something that might keep him out of the top 40 picks, maybe top 50 picks. But a team's going to get really good value on day 2. But yeah, my top 100, I had maybe 14 defensive tackles, and there were 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that I hated leaving out of there because you could make an argument that they belonged in the top 100 just at the defensive tackle position. So this draft's going to have plenty of options for a team like the Giants that probably won't go that direction the first round, but day 2, even into the 4th round, they'll have plenty of guys.
Now I want to go back. I talked to you in December, and I talked to you about the quarterbacks. And when we talked, we prefaced it with you were still in the early stages of your evaluation process. One thing that hung with me and has come true over the last 3 months on social media, people I hear from, I'm sure people you hear from. When I mentioned Shedeur Sanders, you just kind of laughed and you said, I don't necessarily enjoy the evaluation of Shedeur Sanders because no matter what you say, someone has a problem with it. I would imagine that is now magnified 100-fold.
Yeah. I mean, it's, for whatever reason, it's a love-hate thing. Like, if you don't think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in the draft and a top 3 pick, you hate him. And quarterback evaluation is just, there's so much gray area. There's so much context involved. I think Shedeur Sanders is an NFL starter. I think that, he is a player that can come in, operate an NFL offense. He's so polished. I think he's smart. He's tough. He's poised. A lot of qualities that will translate to the next level. Do I think he's a high-level starter? No, I don't. So when the narrative switches from a guy you consider in the first round, a good quality quarterback, to a franchise changer in the top 3, that's where the disconnect is for me. I don't see that type of player. I don't see that type of prospect. Now, there might be people that argue, hey, he's an NFL starter. We need that. So I don't care what level of NFL starter he is. If he's good enough to go 25, he's good enough to go 3. That's fine. But especially if it becomes a conversation. And if Cam Ward's off the board, then it becomes a little different because, you're assuming that Cam Ward be your quarterback A. Do you automatically just go to quarterback B and you're comfortable with that? Or, you have to get the position right. And if you don't think that Shedeur is good enough to raise the level of the offense around you, raise all the players, then you don't take him at 3. But you know what? Quarterback desperation is a real thing. And so maybe you take that swing. Bo Nix had a much better rookie year than I think anybody thought he would. And, that was something on draft night. It was a little bit of a surprise to see him go top 12. And then throughout his rookie year, it's like, okay, he has lived up to being the top 12 pick. So can Shedeur Sanders, even though I don't think the tape screams top 5 pick, I've got plenty of issues with, several areas of his game. Yeah, he's 74% completion percentage, but, he had all the quarterbacks in college football last year, he ranked 101st in terms of percentage of his throws over 10 yards. They just screen. And part of that is the offense. They didn't have a run game. The offensive line wasn't very good. But at the same time, he would run himself into sacks himself. It was not, all those sacks are not just on the offensive line. So the Shedeur Sanders evaluation requires a lot of context. It's something that I know NFL teams are kind of going back and forth about. I haven't talked to one team that is head over heels. Everyone kind of likes him, but is anyone going to love him? And we'll find out on draft weekend, but it makes the evaluation really murky.
You mentioned Cam. I want to know, behind Shedeur, is there anybody in your evaluation that you would, I saw somebody say, again, back to the knocking of Shedeur, well, Jackson Dart can overcome him and become QB2, or someone else might go ahead of Shedeur. In your evaluation, in your rankings, where are the gaps in the ranking of quarterbacks?
Yeah, and I think it's important for everybody to remember that there's not one centralized quarterback rankings. Every team is different. Every team looks at these guys so differently. So, yeah, I absolutely 100% believe there will be teams that don't have Shedeur Sanders as one of the top 2 quarterbacks. There's no doubt. I'm not saying that will be consensus. There's no such thing as consensus when it comes to quarterback rankings. So every team's going to look at these guys a little bit differently, and not just talent-wise, but play style, what fits in their offense, timeline in terms of getting on the field and helping an offense. Jackson Dart, as talented as he is, I don't think he's ready to start from day one. Coming from the Ole Miss offense where it's heavy play action, only, looking one side of the field, his issues in Jackson Dart is more, it's not that he can't do it, it's that it's more of an unknown. And so, that complicates the evaluation. Where do you feel comfortable drafting a player like that? That's why the combine is so important, to sit down with him and, your coaches talk to him, get a better sense for what does he see, how does he read defenses, what doesn't he know, how long is it going to take for us to get there with him. So Tyler Shuck, I'm a big fan of from Louisville, but he's complicated because the medicals are, he's a seventh-year senior, missed a lot of time because of injuries, and then he's going to be 26 this year as a rookie, and so that'll bother some teams, won't bother other teams. If I'm drafting Tyler Shuck at say pick 60, who cares about his age? If I'm drafting a pick 60, and it's not going to stop me from drafting a quarterback next year if Tyler Shuck doesn't work out. So in terms of talent, Shuck is, close to as talented as any other quarterback in his class, but it's more of a complicated evaluation because of his journey in college, 3 different programs, the injuries and all that. So it's a really fascinating evaluation.
Joe Shane made this point in his presser, and then when he talked to us off the podium. I thought it was interesting, so I figured I'd ask you. He talked about taking swings at the quarterback position, but also very proud of their evaluation process and the way they evaluate quarterbacks in the draft. They talked about Dable and what they did back in Buffalo, even Dable prior to that, when Dable was in Miami, I think he said. What I think is interesting is that he hasn't drafted a quarterback yet with the Giants.
Right.
So people have a hard time doing what you do.
Right.
You evaluate quarterbacks the way essentially Joe Shane has done. For the last 3 years, you hadn't have to pick one.
Right.
But they believe they can look at their evaluation and say, okay, we evaluated Jaden Daniels here. Now we see him on the field. Do you buy that as someone who takes the time to evaluate? Can a team gain value in their evaluations, even though they're not pulling the trigger to take the quarterback?
No, sure. I mean, I have so much respect for the scouts and all the guys in the front office, not just the Giants, but throughout the entire league.
Yeah.
These guys put so much work into it. And obviously you're graded on the picks you make and whether or not it works out. That's how ultimately you're going to be graded. It doesn't matter that, you like Jaden Daniels? Cool. That's right. Ultimately, it does not matter. But I think that for an organization that needs to draft a quarterback, if they look at their track record of grading these guys and how they played out in the NFL, I think it's perfectly fine for them to feel confident that, hey, we have a good process here because of, and it's interesting when, because there's different parts of it. There's the evaluation and then there's the valuation. The evaluation is understanding what the player does well, the skill set. The valuation is, okay, where do we draft him? What's the value on draft night? And, that's where, they tried to trade up last year for a quarterback. We know that. How's that going to play out this year in terms of valuation? Are they going to call the Titans and say, hey, let's talk. What's it going to take for you to move back 2 spots? I don't think it's going to be that expensive. It's not going to be like when Panthers went up to get the number 1 pick with the Bears and giving a future 1 and DJ Moore and all that. They're only moving up 2 spots. So if I'm the Giants and I really want a quarterback and I want my quarterback A, I don't want quarterback B, I want my quarterback A. You offer 2 third-round picks to the Titans. That's something I think could potentially get you to number 1 and get you the quarterback you want.
And at that point, you said, if evaluation and valuation meet, that's when you make that deal. And you don't care about what 31 other teams might think or what I think or you think.
It doesn't matter. No, it just matters what is doing what's best. At the end of the day, get it right. It's all that matters at the end of the day. And for a team like the Giants that need a quarterback, if they don't go that direction with free agency, a trade, they go into the draft needing a quarterback, I think they need to do whatever they need to do to get their guy. To get there, again, you don't just fall. You don't have a backup plan. You go get your guy, whoever that might be. Who knows? Maybe they love Jackson Dart. Maybe they love Tyler Shuck. And in that situation, you're not taking him at 3, but you figure out, okay, how do we come away from this draft with our guy? So that's it's not like last year where quarterbacks went 1, 2, 3. I mean, not real mystery there. This year, it's a lot more spread out with this quarterback talent. And so how do you come away with this draft? The guy that you want. That's going to be the challenge and the interesting part of this draft for a team like the Giants.
You talked to me on social media, we went back and forth, and I apologize for those who got caught up in my timeline, who ended up becoming part of your timeline. But it was about Travis Hunter and Will Johnson.
Yeah.
And it was just your point to me, and I respect that, the idea of, Travis Hunter is here and everybody else is, down here. What makes Travis Hunter so special in your eyes, and does it compare to the best corners that you've seen come out and you've graded and evaluated over the past, let's say 10 years?
There's no doubt. I mean, he's a special athlete. And part of the evaluation of what makes him so special is the offensive impact as well. I mean, if you're drafting Travis Hunter, you're doing it with the idea that he's going to play on offense for you as well. And that might be 25 snaps, but on those 25 snaps, he's going to make a big impact. Just him being out there is going to make an impact, but you also get him 8-9 touches a game. That is something that defenses are not going to want to have to defend. So, but as strictly as a corner, ball instincts and the athleticism are outstanding and something that really separate him from a guy like Will Johnson or any of these other corners in this draft. Like Will Johnson, you talk about who is the most at stake at the combine. Will Johnson, the jumps are going to look really good. The agility is going to look really good. What's his 40 going to be? Does he even run a 40? That's what scouts are going to be watching with Will Johnson. He's not a burner. We know that. But is he a 4.49 guy? Can he get under 4.45? It shouldn't matter. But you know what? Cornerback is a stopwatch position. It matters more than any other position. And so if you don't have that, it's hard to go back and look at the past drafts and find a corner who didn't run a 4.45 or better and still go in the top 10 picks. It is hard to find those guys. So for Will Johnson, this is a big week for him just to show that he has enough speed, which is something that scouts have questioned based just on the tape.
On Hunter, one more is, everyone talks the whole generational thing, but I look more on like if I'm finding a number one corner, I know he can be this guy. We've seen guys over the last couple of years, Sauce Gardner and Quinyon Mitchell, what he did with the Eagles. In your evaluations, I don't know if you know off the top of your head where you had those guys. Where would Hunter fit with, say, those two guys?
Sauce was a top 5 player for me in that draft. I think Travis would be ahead of him just because he's so different. He's so special.
Is it because of the wide receiver component?
No, I mean that has to be the cherry on top. I don't think that's a reason why you draft him number one. I think you have to, because in the NFL you have a primary position, secondary position. Nobody has 2 primary positions. It's just not how it works. So this will be interesting here. When teams talk to him, this will be kind of the first time teams actually get a chance to sit down with him. Because he's a junior, so they don't really do it on school calls. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl, or he wasn't interviewing with teams. So getting a chance to talk to Travis and find out just from him, hey, where do you want to play? And I'm sure he's going to say both. But, teams really have to grill him and say, okay, you have to pick one. Let's just say, hypothetically, you have to pick one. Where are you playing? If he wants to play on offense, that's something you have to consider when potentially drafting him top 5, that, hey, yeah, he likes playing defense, but his heart's on offense. He wants the ball. So is he going to be okay if you draft him as a corner and, you still work him into the offensive game plan, but his identity will be as a corner? Is he going to be okay with that? So that's where here at the Combine, that'll be an important data point for teams picking in the top 5, top 6 that'll actually have a chance at drafting Travis Hunter. 2 more. One, that Giants sitting at 3. We've already talked about the idea, and I agree with you. If they don't get the guy they want in free agency or a trade, I think they probably do have to trade up to number 1 just to assure there are no questions on draft night. But if they are sitting at 3, how do you see the top 3 playing out right now? I know that can change, but in your mind, do you think both quarterbacks are sitting there, or what's the decision they have to make? I have no idea. The quarterbacks are so tough to pick right now because the coaches haven't gotten involved in the process yet. So they don't even know.
You mean Brian Dable dapping it up with Shador doesn't qualify as getting involved in the
It's amazing how a 5-second clip will just kind of take off. And we know Brian Dable, how he feels about these quarterbacks is going to have a heavy thumb on the scale in terms of what they do. So that's a big part of this, and that'll happen this week here at the Combine. I think if you have the Titans or the Browns at 1 and 2, you're giving off vibes that we're taking a quarterback. You're telling everybody we're taking a quarterback, and because you want the teams behind you, the Giants, the Raiders, whoever else, to think, hey, we can't sit here and wait. We need to go get them. So I do think we're going to see some trades in the top 5. Hypothetically, let's say we don't. I think there's a good chance that we see the Titans go with either. I think they go Abdul Carter, go with the pass rusher, and the Browns are interesting because they need a quarterback badly. Is Cam Ward? Do they have him high enough? I think that would make sense. You talk about taking swings. The Browns could do that at 2, and then with the Giants at 3, do they like Shedeur enough to take him there? I have my doubts.
Wouldn't that be fascinating? That would be fascinating if on draft night they have to choose between Travis Hunter and Deion Sanders.
Yeah, it would be. And I think that I think the fan base would be split too, right?
Yes, I think there are Giants fans who do not want Deion Sanders.
Right.
And you know why? Actually, I lied. 2 more questions. The Deion factor.
Yeah.
The specter of, the Giants aren't playing well early in the year, and Deion's going to take to the podium or take to social media and talk. There's obviously an ever-changing landscape in today's NFL and college football. How much have you heard that, considered that when Shedeur comes up in your talks with teams? And we know the fans think it, we know the media thinks it.
Yeah.
Where are teams on that?
Honestly, I have not. It's probably an unspoken thing. Like, it's not something that teams generally talk about, like the Deion impact and any future desires to get into the NFL as a coach. Like, I think it's because it's such an unknown. They don't even really spend a lot of time talking about it because how do you predict something like that? Like, we can only go based off of what the tape tells us and, what this player is saying to us. We can't really guess what's going to happen down the road. So honestly, it doesn't get talked about. It's just the idea of something happening, of the Deion effect. It gets mentioned, but not to the point where I don't think anybody's going to not draft Shedeur because of the family ties or anything like that. I think it's all going to come down to, because his teams talk really highly about the leadership and all that. I don't think it's something that with the Deion factor, it's going to affect his draft stock at all.
It's funny because I've said to people, and I know it's not the same, but if this were 2004 and Archie Manning was a little different,
right,
and the landscape was a little different and media was different, Eli still gets hate from San Diego Chargers fans, and people still look at the Mannings a lot differently. I just want to know, other than the landscape, what's different between Deion's involvement and Archie Manning's involvement? Because ultimately there are a lot of similarities in terms of power play, what people are going to look at, and we all know behind the scenes, Archie wasn't out in front of the microphones, but we know behind the scenes, Archie was talking to a lot of people about Eli, not just before his career, but during the year. So it's interesting.
It is interesting. And obviously, the 2004 draft was a little bit before my time.
Yeah.
But I was in high school. I remember vividly watching that and play out and said, who does Eli Manning think he is? Dictating where he's going to go. But you know what? It worked out for him because of winning 2 Super Bowls and a future Hall of Fame career. So it is something that the way things played out, I don't think we necessarily remember it that way. But if it gets messy, then it's like, okay, a parent, or in this situation, a parent and a coach.
Right. His coach.
Yeah, exactly. Really. But, it's teams being at the top of the draft usually aren't very good for a reason. And so it's, you're talking about teams that have a lot of ways they need to get better. Deion Sanders has talked openly about the Browns. Like, I don't know, is he okay with the Browns, an organization that has not been able to draft and develop a quarterback? Like, I just don't know what Deion and Shedeur, what their perspective is. Like, what do they view as a good organization? What don't they view as a good organization? Where do they view opportunity? Where don't they view opportunity? It would be easy to say that Cleveland's not a good spot for him, but Shedeur openly talks about the Browns, and so it's a tough dynamic to understand, maybe from where their perspective is coming from. And if they do force their way to a certain place, I would just hope they were open about it publicly to explain their thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Last one. Give me a couple guys that are your favorite guys, whether it's early, late. Who are you looking at and saying, you know what, those are Dane guys?
The offensive tackle from Missouri, Armand Membu. 20 years old. He's a right tackle at Missouri, but this guy, some people want to move him inside the guard. He's 6'4". I don't know why height matters as much. I mean, tape says he's a tackle. So I think he's going to be a tackle in the league for a long time. He's a top 10 player in this draft for me. We'll see if he goes that high. Carson Schlesinger, UCLA linebacker, just so much fun to watch. He's maybe a little bit light on contact, but in terms of range, in terms of instincts, there's nobody better in this class at linebacker than Schlesinger. Who are some of my guys? Jacob Parrish, corner from Kansas State's one of my guys. Mike Green, a pass rusher from Marshall, I've been super high on. It's just a fun pass rusher class. I don't think there's a true Myles Garrett in this draft, but and even Abdul Carter, right? I like, but it's just a lot of quality edge rushers that are going to go somewhere in the top 50 picks. And so if you need defensive line, this is going to be the draft for you.
All right, I lied. One more. There's one guy who, by the end of the weekend, I know your on the field stuff is as important as all this stuff that we get involved in. Who's the one guy that your prediction on Sunday or Monday will be talking about? Like, for example, like Worthy, basically launched himself into the back end of the first round just by basically, making history.
Yeah. It's not to say just one. I'll give you three. Nick Emenwari, safety from South Carolina. He's 6'3", 225. His jump's going to be over 40 inches. He'll be a star. John Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. He's an athletic freak. And then Shamar Stewart, the 280-pound defensive end from A&M who doesn't have the production, but the traits are off the charts. And that's why he's ultimately going to be a top 15 pick in this draft.
Dane Brugler, the Beast coming up. We got a date yet or what?
First week in April sometime. Whenever I hit that wall, and it's like, all right, here, just hand it out to the masses. But which, I don't know, we're almost a month away, so it'll be here before we know it. Yeah.
And as always, thanks to Dane. The more I listen to Dane, the more it baffles me that there hasn't been a smart team in the NFL who hasn't called up Dane Brugler and said, you know what? Stop working for the Athletic. Stop doing your own thing. You're coming to work for us in our personnel department, because the guy is aces. I had a lot of great things to say about Jordan Reed, and he is great at what he does. Dane Brugler, different style, different way he delivers his information and his evaluations, but again, two of the best. So again, I appreciate Dane for coming on, and the more people talk about Travis Hunter, the more it's hard for me to think that's going to be some decision that the Giants have to make if they have to decide between Travis Hunter at a position of need, a position of value, and clearly a generational prospect. Decide between him and solving the quarterback issue. So for the Giants, it's a big thing. The Matthew Stafford thing is going to be huge. What they do in free agency, if the Stafford thing does not happen, do they sign a guy like Russell Wilson to come here and kind of work with the young quarterback? Remains to be seen on what the Giants will do. So for Dane Brugler and for our producer, Paul Wood, I am Art Stapleton. We will be back Wednesday. It's the defensive line and the outside linebackers and inside linebackers. Thursday is the DBs, so Travis Hunter will take center stage. Then Friday morning, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and the rest of the quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. Again, the media interviews are separate than the on-the-field drills. Team interviews are going on as we speak in the morning and at night. And then, as I explained the other night, behind the scenes, the after hours portion of the NFL Combine is where you find out the real dirt and juice and the buzz that's going on around teams, and the Giants are finding themselves smack dab in the middle for a team that won 3 games last year and has not made the playoffs in Brian Daboll's last 2 years. They're certainly generating a lot of buzz in a lot of different avenues. So again, for all those guys that I mentioned, appreciate you